back to my channel. My name is Allie if you're new here, and on my channel I post bookish, lifestyle, and personal development type videos. So today we are doing a wrap-up and TBR. So my July wrap-up and my August TBR. I do have my iPad here that's got all my notes because this is the first time I'm doing like a legit video like this. So I just wanted to be extra prepared. So for July, I read 8 books. I read 5 audiobooks and 3 physical books, I believe. Yeah. So we'll just start with ones that I read first, and then we'll make our way down the list. So first things first, I read When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. And this book follows our main character, Sydney, and she is trying to save her, more like preserve her history of her town as it's going through a process of gentrification. And it's got a twist at the end. There's some like, is it paranormal type aspects? And then she runs into Theo, and the reason she runs into him is she's decided that her best way to go about preserving the history of her town and her neighborhood is to create a foot tour where she can tour people around to the town and give them, or the neighborhood, and give them like actual events of things that have happened. And Theo decides to be her helper. Theo came into the town as a boyfriend of one of the people who are gentrifying the town, and they broke up, and so he's falling for Sydney and wanting to help her save her neighborhood and preserve the history of her neighborhood. It also has quite a twist at the ending, which I wasn't anticipating, and that is the part of it. So I gave it a 3-star rating, and the reason why my rating isn't higher is because I didn't love the twist at the end. It kind of reminded me of Lock Every Door by Riley Sager, like the ending of that, and I just wasn't blown away by it. It was okay. I really liked the whole beginning of the book. I thought that it was really interesting, and I felt like the story really, the premise was really good, but the execution of the ending just didn't live up to my standards. But overall, solid 3-star read. 3 stars is still a great book. It's just not the best book I've ever read. The next book that I read was Comedy Drama by Bob Odenkirk. This was a memoir that I listened to, and I liked it. I gave it 4 stars. I just didn't take anything away from it, so that's why it's not 5 stars. I tried not to rate memoirs low because it's their life. Obviously, I can't rate their life, but I didn't take anything away from this, and so I didn't think that it was deserving of like a full 5 stars. But basically, this is the story of him building his way through showbiz, and like his different, it just kind of went into like the processes of the different shows he was on and the different acts that he did and things like that. And I really enjoyed it, but like I said, I just didn't take anything away from it. The next book that I read was We Were Dreamers by Simu Liu. And I really, really love this book. This was my favorite book of July. And I gave it 5 stars. I loved it. So for this book, it follows Simu growing up. His parents were Chinese immigrants that moved to Canada for a higher education. And so they obviously had very high expectations. And then when he was a child, they brought him over to Canada as well from China. And they had very high expectations of what he needed to be and how he needed to go about his life, basically. And he had to have very good grades. And because of these expectations, it became kind of an abusive relationship, and things just didn't work out well for his childhood. And he had a really rough childhood. And it shows him coming to know himself and knowing what he wants out of life, and realizing that he didn't really care what his parents thought, and he wanted to do what he wanted to do, which I really appreciated. And there's just lots of sections in the book where he talks about just doing what you want to do. So there's this quote in this book that says, "Nothing, no accolades, no parental love, no amount of money was worth spending my life shackled to a job that I hated that much. That is no way to live a life. And if you are reading this paragraph with that sinking feeling in your stomach because I've just described your life, I implore you to begin taking steps to find an occupation that leaves you with a sense of joy and accomplishment when you come home every day. At the very least, start looking at ways you can get a side hustle going. The unknown is always scary, but not nearly as much as waking up one morning realizing you have wasted your precious life in pursuit of someone else's idea of success. I choose the unknown every time. And that I highlighted that paragraph really stood out to me because that's something that's really important to me. I'm not a big fan of wasting my life away for somebody else's dream. So I really appreciated that statement. And honestly, when I went into this book, so I love Simu Liu. I heard about him obviously through Shang-Chi. And I knew as soon as this book came out, I was going to buy it. And so when it did release, I expected there to be a lot more talk about like him as an Avenger and him in Marvel. And really that was like barely touched the surface, which I really appreciated because I felt like if there was more of that, it probably wouldn't have been as heartfelt. It would have just been for like the clicks basically, except for the reads, I guess. And I loved it. I loved every second of reading that book, and I highly recommend that. The next book that I read was The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. This book follows Natasha, and she is trying to save her family from being deported that day. She has till about 10 o'clock that night to save her family from being deported because they were illegal immigrants from Jamaica, and they're being sent back because of a mistake that her dad made. And I really liked this. I read this in one day, and it's been a long time since I've read a book in just one day, but I just sped through this book. It's about, Natasha's trying to save her family from deportation, and she runs into Daniel, and Daniel is getting ready for the biggest interview of his life, basically. He is interviewing for a college. I feel like it's Yale. I can't remember off the top of my head now. But he is interviewing to get into this college to prove his parents that he can become a doctor or a lawyer or whatever like that. And he doesn't want to. He has no interest, and so he's pushing it off, and he meets Natasha, and it's about their banter and their kindling romance, and it's very heartwarming, and I really, really enjoyed this. I gave this one 4 stars. Not the best book I've ever read, but I really loved it. Okay, the next book that I read was One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. This book follows August, and she has spent her life being basically a sidekick trying to solve a case of what happened to her mom's brother. About 30 years ago, he went missing, and so her mom and her have spent the last 30 years, she's 23, so since she was born, but her mom for the last 30 years has spent trying to figure out what happened to her brother. Eventually, August gets tired of always looking for somebody and being a part of a case, and so she moves away to New York to go to school. And while she's in New York, she finds herself enveloped in her own case because the girl that she's starting to fall for is displaced into her timeline from the 1970s. So it's about her trying to get her back and get her out of the situation that she's in, and I really enjoyed it. I think that honestly, I gave it 4 stars, and honestly I think the reason that I didn't give it 5 stars is just because I was comparing it to Red, White, and Royal Blue, and I liked that one a little bit more. So it didn't get the full 5, but I highly recommend this book. It was really entertaining, and the audiobook is top tier. Okay, the next book that I read was Cersei by Madeline Miller, and I gave this book 4 stars as well. I read this for my work's book club, and I was very back and forth about this book. So this follows Cersei. Of course, she's the daughter of the Titan god Helios, and she is kind of the lesser of all of her siblings, of all of her family. She has the voice of a hawk, which is the voice of a mortal, basically, and so they find her rather annoying, and people just aren't very nice to her. And one day she does something that gets her in a situation where she's alone, and she has to come to her power, and she has to come to learn to be with herself. And it's a very, very much a coming-of-age story that takes place over thousands of years, because Cersei is a goddess, so she obviously is immortal, so she lives over thousands of years. I think this takes place over hundreds of years, but it was a really enjoyable read. And once I got about halfway through the book, I actually started to like Cersei. At the beginning, she was very naive, and I had a really hard time getting like interested in her story, just because I felt like she was just ridiculously naive. Like what she was doing just didn't logically make sense. However, as time went on, I changed my opinion on that, and I actually ended up really liking it, and I gave it 4 stars. So we were talking about the books that I read in July. So the next book is Forget Me Not by Ellie, what's her last name? By Ellie Terry. And I gave this book 2 stars. I really didn't love it, and it was okay. My problem with this book, so it follows Callie June, and she is a girl who, she's in like 7th or 8th grade, and she moves around a lot. Her mom pretty much moves every time she gets in and out of a relationship, so Callie has to change schools a lot, and that's hard enough when you're in like 7th or 8th grade, but she also has Tourette's, and so people look at her strangely, and people don't understand her. But the thing about this book that I didn't love was, first of all, her mom and her therapist or doctor told her to hide her Tourette's, which is just not feasible. I didn't appreciate that from her mom's stance. You would think that being a mother of somebody with Tourette's, you would be more supportive. So I found that to be really frustrating. And then also, I just felt like this has nothing to do with like her having Tourette's, but her as a person was she felt younger than she was. So she was 7th or 8th grade. She was acting like she was in like 4th grade. Like she just felt like she was really young, which was irritating to me. She just had no social skills, which I know can come from that situation, like not making good friends because you're moving and then people looking at you weird. But that just was really, she didn't have good social skills. She didn't have good, I don't know. I just didn't love the way she interacted with people. It all felt naive all the way through. Even at the end, like there was this part where the bully went up to her, and sorry if this is a spoiler, it's not really, but if you don't want to know anything about the book, just skip for like 15 seconds. But the bully came up to her and was like, if you keep acting weird like that, nobody's gonna give you a friendship necklace. And I was like, when I was in 7th or 8th grade, getting a friendship necklace was not like, I don't know, that just felt a little young, and I didn't love it. So basically throughout the story though, she meets this boy named Jinsong, and he's the class president or student body president or whatever, and he picks up a liking to her and becomes her friend, and it's just kind of their relationship developing, and then him convincing her to like tell people about her Tourette's, which I did enjoy that aspect of the book. I just didn't like Callie as a character because I felt like she was just really naive. So there's that. And then the last book that I read in July was The Empress of Salt and Fortune. I enjoyed it. It was like, here's the thing, is that I don't know what happened in this book. I listened to the audiobook. The audiobook was like 2 hours, and I listened to it on a faster speed, so I have no idea. I enjoyed the story while I was listening to it, but I don't know what it was about, which I know is horrible, but it was just one, it didn't click with me. It was good. I rated it 3 stars. I enjoyed it while I was reading it, but it just didn't stick. So there's that. Okay, now it's time to talk about my very, very ambitious TBR for August. So this month for August, I have another 8 books that I want to read. So I guess not as ambitious as I thought it was, other than the books are a little bit thicker and they're all physical. No, almost all of them are physical. So I'm just gonna go ahead and jump right into it. So I'll start with the physical books that I own, and then we can hop on over to the audio and digital ones as well. So first things first is I want to finish The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. I am almost done with this. I'm a page 340, so I've got like 40 pages left. I'll finish this today, but I am enjoying this so far. This is about Luna, and she drank moonlight when she was a child. She was given up by the town to protect the town for a year, basically, and the witch would take her. However, there was a miscommunication, and the witch didn't realize that that's why these babies were being left. And so Luna was fed moonlight as a baby, and this is just kind of her story of getting magic and the town people trying to stop having to give their baby to the witch, basically. So I don't have a lot to say on this until I finish it. My thoughts are a little jumbled in my head, but so far I'm enjoying it, and I'm excited to finish this book. Okay, the next book, I'm also going to preface this by saying that I don't know a lot about these books, the ones that I'm going to read, and that's because I like to go into books blind. So if I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, it's because I do, and because I don't know what I'm talking about because I like to go in blind. So the next book that I'm going to read is Clara and the Sun. I'm really excited to read this. I've been seeing it everywhere, and I've always wanted to read it, and I saw it at Barnes & Noble when I was there last time, and I was like, I'm doing it. So that is another one that I'm going to read in August. The next book that I'm going to read is The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager, and it's got a sticker, and I hate these stupid Barnes & Noble. Why do you have to put stickers on your books? You should know better. You're a bookseller. There's two. This is the exclusive edition, but I'm going to keep that sticker on. Anyways, I've heard a lot of mixed reviews about this book. I don't know a ton about it other than somebody across the lake goes missing. But I am super excited to read this. I love Riley Sager. I absolutely adored Home Before Dark and Lock Every Door, so I'm really excited to read this regardless of the reviews. I think that I'm going to like it, so I'm going to read this as well this month. Okay, the next book I'm going to read is Death Note Volume 1. I'm about halfway through this already, so that shouldn't be an issue at all to read. And then, depending on where I'm at with my TBR and if I feel an inkling to continue reading it, I can also read the rest of the series because I do own the whole series. But I'm just giving myself the goal of reading the first one, and then we'll see from there how much more I get into it. But I really like Death Note. This is a reread for the first half of the series, and then once I get through the first half, then it will be like a first read because I've only read up until book 4. But I'm really excited to get this read. Okay, my last physical books are the Infernal Devices. So I read the Mortal Instruments, the first 3 Mortal Instruments books, back in 2020? It was either late 2020 or early 2021. I still lived at home with my parents, and I absolutely loved reading them. However, I think it was 2020. Wow, that's forever ago. I loved reading them. But I picked up Clockwork Angel right after I read the first 3 Mortal Instruments books, and I had a hard time going straight from one to the other just with the change of characters. That just shocked me a little bit. So I was camping when I read this, when I first started to read it, and I just was not in a good reading mood, and so I put it down, kind of fell into a reading slump from there. But I know that everybody says that the Infernal Devices are their favorite Cassandra Clare books, so I am really excited to pick these up. So my goal, honestly, for August is to read the whole series, the whole Infernal Devices series, not the whole Shadowhunter series, but I'm really excited, and these books are not in order, but I definitely think that I'll be able to get these read in the next month or so. They're still not in order. What am I doing? It would be this way. There. Now you can see the pretty spines. Anyways, I'm excited to read these, so wish me luck, and maybe I'll do like a dedicated Shadowhunters vlog for this. And then the other two books that I have that I want to read for August is the first one is the book that I'm currently listening to on audio, and that's The Lost Apothecary. I'm about 60% of the way through it, so I should finish that in the next couple of days before the end of the week, and I'm really, really enjoying that as well. And then the last book that I'm super excited to be reading is Under the Whispering Door by